Ever wished you could just hit a button and like instantly get everyone around you super motivated?
Oh, yeah.
Well, while that magic button unfortunately doesn't exist,
Right.
this deep dive into 100 ways to motivate others might be the next best thing.
Sounds good.
We're going to be uncovering the secrets to inspiring action, not by forcing it, but by tapping into what already drives people, ready to unlock some serious leadership potential.
Absolutely. And what's so fascinating about this book is how it kind of like flips the script on all those like traditional motivation tactics, you know?
Yeah.
Steve Chandler and Scott Richardson, they argue that you can't really make someone motivated, you know? It has to come from within.
Okay, so no more cheesy pep talks.
Right.
I can get behind that.
Right.
But how do you actually like cultivate that intrinsic motivation in others?
Well, the book goes deep into this idea of managing agreements, not people.
Okay.
It's about shifting your focus from limitations to possibilities instead of like trying to control every action.
Right. You create a framework where everyone understands the goals.
Yeah.
And their role in achieving them.
So it's less about barking orders and more about creating a shared understanding and vision.
Exactly. And you know, one of the most intriguing concepts they introduce is the quit switch.
Okay.
They say almost everyone has this like mental switch that flips when things get tough.
That's a really powerful image. But how do you actually recognize that switch?
Right.
Either in yourself or in someone you're trying to motivate.
Yeah.
And more importantly, how do you keep it from flipping?
That's where the book gets really practical. You know, the authors provide specific techniques for managing that quit switch and building resilience.
Okay.
And they emphasize that this applies to both the leader and the individual. Like, persistence is key for everyone.
I'm starting to see how this goes way beyond just surface level motivation techniques.
Yeah.
This is about understanding the deeper psychology at play. Absolutely. And the book is full of these counterintuitive approaches that really make you think.
Okay.
For example, they argue that to get more done, you should actually slow down.
Wait, slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It might seem paradoxical, but by
Sure.
focusing on the fundamentals, by like taking the time to truly understand the task at hand, you actually increase efficiency and reduce errors in the long run.
Okay.
They use this great analogy of a music professor who transformed a student's performance simply by like spending an hour dissecting just 2 measures of music.
So it's about that laser focus on the core elements, the building blocks of success, rather than trying to do everything at once.
Precisely. And that principle can be applied to so many areas, not just music.
Right.
They also talk about leading by selling, suggesting that, in a sense, we're all in sales, whether we realize it or not.
I'm intrigued, but also a little skeptical. It sounds kind of manipulative, doesn't it?
Not necessarily. They use this great story about a salesperson who had to close the sale multiple times before the customer finally said yes.
Okay.
It's not about being pushy, but about understanding the other person's needs and persistently demonstrating how you can help them achieve their goals.
So it's more about building relationships and trust and showcasing the value you bring to the table.
Exactly. It's about framing your leadership in a way that resonates with others and inspires them to take action.
That makes a lot more sense. Now, another concept that caught my eye was this worst first time management philosophy. Is that as daunting as it sounds?
It might seem counterintuitive, but the authors argue that tackling your most dreaded task first thing in the morning can actually free up mental energy and reduce that feeling of overwhelm.
Okay.
It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, get it over with, and enjoy the feeling of relief and accomplishment.
So it's about facing those challenges head on rather than letting them loom over you all day.
Exactly. And that sense of accomplishment can create a positive momentum that carries you through the rest of your day.
I can see how that would be a game changer for productivity. Now, one final point that I think will resonate with you is the idea of letting them see you grow.
That's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
The authors argued that demonstrating personal growth as a leader can be incredibly inspiring for your team.
Okay.
It shows them that you're not stagnant, that you're constantly striving to improve, and it creates a culture of continuous learning and development.
It's like saying, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm still learning, but I'm committed to getting better.
Yeah.
And you can too.
Exactly.
It's humanizing and creates a sense of shared journey.
Absolutely. It breaks down those barriers between leader and team member and fosters a more collaborative and supportive environment. And building on that whole idea of shared growth, the second half of 100 Ways to Motivate Others really dives into the psychology of motivation.
Okay, so we're getting into the nitty-gritty of like individual motivation here.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin with that?
Well, the authors suggest a pretty radical shift in perspective.
Okay.
Instead of getting bogged down trying to fix people's weaknesses, they encourage leaders to focus on identifying and amplifying their strengths.
So it's about finding that hidden superpower in each person.
Yeah.
And like giving them the space to shine.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone has unique talents and abilities.
Right.
And that a truly effective leader helps people leverage those strengths to achieve both individual and collective goals.
That makes a lot of sense. It seems like a much more positive and empowering approach than constantly trying to fit square pegs into round holes.
Right. And it creates a more engaged and energized work environment. The book also highlights the importance of keeping things simple for those who aren't naturally driven by process, focusing on the desired outcomes and results.
So instead of micromanaging every step, you set clear goals, provide the necessary resources, and trust people to find their own path to success.
Precisely. It's about empowering people and fostering a sense of ownership. The authors talk about coaching the outcome rather than dictating every detail of the process.
That ties back to that idea of managing agreements rather than people.
Exactly.
It's about creating a shared understanding of what needs to be accomplished and then giving people the freedom to figure out how to get there.
Exactly. And along the way, positive reinforcement plays a crucial role. The authors emphasize acknowledging and rewarding good performance rather than just focusing on what people are doing wrong.
It's about catching people doing things right and making them feel valued for their contributions.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, but I imagine it makes a huge difference in motivation and morale.
Absolutely. It creates a more positive and encouraging work environment, which leads to higher performance and greater job satisfaction.
Right.
But positive reinforcement only goes so far if the leader isn't in tune with what's actually happening.
Right.
You know, the book really stresses the importance of knowing the score. Being up to date on the metrics and what they mean.
Because if you don't know the score, how can you even begin to coach your team to victory?
Right.
You're just wandering around in the dark.
Right. The authors argue that a leader needs to be the numbers person for the team. Even if they don't naturally enjoy working with data. It's about understanding the metrics, tracking progress, and providing feedback based on concrete evidence.
So it's about being data informed, not data driven. You use the numbers to guide your decisions and provide feedback, but you don't let them dictate your every move or define your team's worth.
Exactly. It's about using data as a tool for understanding and improvement, not as a weapon for control or judgment.
Now, one thing that struck me as particularly interesting was this idea of creating a game out of work.
Oh, yeah.
How do you make something as serious as work feel more like a game?
It's about introducing elements of fun, challenge, and friendly competition. They give an example of a manager who tackled an absenteeism problem by creating a game around attendance with rewards and recognition for those who consistently showed up.
So it's about finding ways to tap into people's natural desire for challenge and achievement and making work feel more engaging and rewarding.
Precisely. It's about shifting the energy and mindset from drudgery to excitement. But creating that shift also requires managing our own energy and focus. The book revisits this idea of doing the worst task first.
Which, as we discussed, can be incredibly liberating. To get that big, scary task off your plate first thing in the morning. But what about those times when you just can't seem to focus? Even on the smaller tasks.
That's where the authors emphasize the importance of concentration and single tasking. Of giving your full attention to one task at a time rather than trying to juggle multiple things at once. They debunk this myth of multitasking and highlight how true focus leads to better results.
Because when we try to do too many things at once, we end up doing none of them well. We're constantly switching our attention, which is mentally exhausting and ultimately unproductive.
The authors argue that by focusing on one task at a time, we can actually get more done in less time and with less stress. It's about working smarter, not harder.
And that brings us back to the importance of managing our internal state, of choosing our thoughts and emotions carefully.
Yes, the book dives deep into the power of mindset. And emphasizes that we have the power to choose our responses to external events. By cultivating a more positive and empowering mindset, we can change our entire experience of work and life.
So it's about recognizing that we're not just victims of circumstance. We have agency in how we perceive and react to the world around us.
Exactly. And one technique they suggest for cultivating that positive mindset is to debate yourself. To question your own negative thoughts and beliefs and look for alternative, more empowering perspectives.
It's like becoming your own internal coach or cheerleader.
Yeah.
Challenging those limiting beliefs and replacing them with thoughts that support your growth and success.
Precisely. And that shift in mindset extends to how we interact with others. We talk about the importance of being willing to give up being right, of listening to others' perspectives, and being open to learning from their experiences.
Because collaboration and innovation thrive in an environment where everyone feels heard and respected, regardless of their position or title.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture of shared learning and growth. Where everyone is encouraged to contribute their unique talents and perspectives. And that requires a leader who is willing to admit when they're wrong and take responsibility for their mistakes.
Because nobody's perfect.
Right.
And by being open about our own fallibility, we create a more forgiving and supportive work environment.
Exactly.
It allows people to take risks and learn from their mistakes without fear of judgment or punishment.
Absolutely. It's about creating a culture of psychological safety where people feel comfortable being themselves and sharing their ideas. And that openness extends to communication. The authors emphasize the importance of being truthful and transparent with your team. Because
trust is the foundation of any successful relationship. And that includes the relationship between a leader and their team.
It's about being upfront about challenges, sharing information openly, and keeping your promises. And they specifically point out that even something as simple as email can be motivational. If we are mindful of the tone and the message being conveyed.
Because in today's digital world, so much of our communication happens online, where it's easy for messages to be misinterpreted or misconstrued.
Exactly. The authors stress the importance of being clear, concise, and respectful in our digital communications, just as we would be in face-to-face interactions.
And speaking of face-to-face interactions, they also talk about the importance of slowing down and being present in our interactions with others, rather than rushing through conversations or constantly checking our phones.
It's about being fully present, both physically and mentally, in our interactions with others. It's about listening attentively, making eye contact, and really connecting with the person in front of you.
And that goes beyond just work interactions. It's about being present in all of our relationships, whether it's with family, friends, or even strangers we encounter throughout the day.
Absolutely. It's about bringing that same level of intention and presence to every interaction, big or small.
Now, shifting gears a bit, the authors also talk about the importance of setting clear deadlines and expectations. They actually use their own experience of writing a book as an example.
Yes, they talk about how they were able to complete a book in a remarkably short time frame. Because they had a firm deadline imposed by their publisher.
Because deadlines can be incredibly motivating, can't they? They give us a sense of urgency and focus. And they help us prioritize what's truly important.
Exactly. And without deadlines, it's easy to procrastinate or get sidetracked.
And speaking of staying on track, they also talk about the importance of creating a routine and sticking to it. I know that can be a challenge for some people, especially those who thrive on spontaneity. But I've found that having a consistent routine helps me stay focused and productive even when I don't feel like it.
Absolutely. It's about creating those positive habits that eventually become second nature. And that frees up mental energy to focus on other more important things.
Now, one of their more unexpected points is about the importance of learning to say no. Which can be a really difficult skill for a lot of people, especially those who are naturally inclined to please others.
It's definitely a challenge. But the authors argue that saying no to things that are not important or aligned with our goals is essential for protecting our time and energy and focusing on what matters most. They suggest focusing on developing your yes muscle first, saying yes to the important things in your life, and then the no muscle will get easier.
Because if we say yes to everything, we end up spreading ourselves too thin. And ultimately accomplishing very little. It's about being selective with our commitments and making sure that we're investing our time and energy in things that truly matter to us.
And that includes taking care of ourselves, both physically and mentally. The authors suggest that by maintaining our own well-being, we actually become more effective leaders.
It's that whole idea of you can't pour from an empty cup. We need to make sure that we're taking care of our own needs so that we can show up fully for our team.
And that includes being open to being coached ourselves. They argue that even the best leaders can benefit from guidance and support.
It's about recognizing that there's always room for improvement and being willing to seek out help when we need it. And it also involves being mindful of the stories we tell ourselves about work and leadership.
That's about challenging our limiting beliefs and assumptions and reframing our narratives to be more empowering and supportive.
So instead of telling ourselves that leadership is hard or stressful, we can choose to see it as an opportunity for growth and contribution.
Right.
And one of the most powerful ways to embody that positive mindset is to let people see you grow.
As we discussed earlier, demonstrating personal growth as a leader can be incredibly inspiring for your team.
Right.
It shows them that you're not stagnant, that you're constantly striving to improve, and it creates a culture of continuous learning and development.
It's like saying, hey, I'm not perfect, I'm still learning, but I'm committed to getting better. And you can too.
Exactly.
It's humanizing and creates a sense of shared journey.
Absolutely. It breaks down those barriers between leader and team member and fosters a more collaborative and supportive environment.
Right.
And it also ties into this idea of being a ruthless optimist, which the authors emphasize as being crucial in today's challenging business environment.
Because optimism is contagious, isn't it?
Yeah.
It inspires hope and motivates action.
Exactly. By focusing on possibilities rather than limitations, you create a more positive and productive work environment.
It's about choosing to see the glass as half full, even when things are tough. It's about believing in your team's ability to succeed, even when faced with obstacles.
And that brings us to one of the final and perhaps most important points the authors make.
What's that?
Well, they actually added like 101st way in the revised edition of the book.
Oh, wow.
And it's a powerful one.
Okay.
Let them see you change and grow.
Let them see you change and grow.
Let them see you change and grow.
Why do you think they added that?
I think it kind of underscores a core theme that runs throughout the whole book.
Okay.
That leadership isn't about like having all the answers or projecting this image of perfection. You know, it's about being on a journey of growth and evolution, both personally and professionally. Yeah. And when you're willing to let others see you on that journey, to be transparent about your struggles and your triumphs, it creates this powerful sense of connection and trust.
It's like you're saying, look, I don't have it all figured out.
Right.
But I'm committed to learning and growing.
Yeah.
And I want you to come along with me.
Exactly.
It takes the pressure off of having to be this like flawless leader.
Yeah.
And creates a more authentic and relatable experience for everyone.
Exactly. And that vulnerability, that willingness to show up as like a human being can be incredibly inspiring for those around you. Yeah. It gives them permission to embrace their own imperfections and to see growth as like an ongoing process, not like a destination.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Right.
How can you take these 101 ways and turn them into like tangible action in your own life?
And the authors leave us with this really thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Leadership is about opening the heart. What does that mean to you?
That's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the deeper essence of leadership, which goes beyond just achieving goals or hitting targets.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with people on a human level, understanding their motivations and inspiring them to tap into their own potential.
It's about creating a sense of shared purpose, of working together towards something bigger than ourselves.
And it's about being authentic, being vulnerable, and being willing to show our own humanity. Because when we lead from the heart, we create a more compassionate, more collaborative, and ultimately more successful work environment.
One where individuals feel valued, supported, and empowered to contribute their best. And where the focus is not just on results, but on the journey of growth and transformation that unfolds along the way.
I think that's the biggest takeaway for me from this deep dive into 100 ways to motivate others. It's not just about techniques or strategies. It's about a fundamental shift in our mindset and approach to leadership.
It's about moving away from that old model of command and control and embracing a more human-centered approach. It's about seeing the potential in others, even when they don't see it themselves, and creating the conditions for that potential to flourish.
And it's about remembering that leadership is a journey, not a destination, and that we're all constantly learning and growing.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm going to leave you with this challenge.
Okay.
Think about how you can apply these insights to your own life, both at work and beyond.
How can you open your heart to the people you lead, to your colleagues, to your friends and family?
How can you inspire them to tap into their own potential and achieve their dreams?
And most importantly, how can you continue to learn and grow as a leader?
Right.
So that you can make a positive impact on the world around you.
Because true leadership isn't about power or control.
Right.
It's about service and contribution. It's about making a difference in the lives of others.
And that's a journey worth taking.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into 100 ways to motivate others.
Yes. Thanks for listening.
We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we did. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep leading from the heart.